The laughter started before Elena Vasquez even finished her sentence. "Excuse me, Sergeant, could I try the rifle range today?" Corporal Jenkins nearly choked on his coffee, setting the mug down with a sharp clink against the metal table. The three other soldiers standing near the equipment shed turned to stare, their expressions shifting from surprise to barely contained amusement. "You want to what now?" Jenkins asked, his voice carrying across the morning air loud enough for the entire training group to hear. His tone suggested she had just requested to pilot a fighter jet or perform brain surgery. "Martinez, you hearing this? Our supply clerk wants to play sniper." Staff Sergeant Martinez looked up from his clipboard, his weathered face creasing into what might have been a smile if it held any warmth. He walked over slowly, boots crunching on the gravel, taking his time to look Elena up and down with the kind of assessment usually reserved for broken equipment. "Ma'am, with all due respect, this is advanced marksmanship training. We're talking about precision shooting at distances that challenge experienced combat veterans." Elena stood perfectly still, her hands clasped behind her back in regulation position. The small black Talon pin on her collar caught the early sunlight for just a moment, a tiny glint of metal that none of the men seemed to notice. Her uniform was pressed sharp, her posture flawless, but to them she remained simply the woman who handled supply requests and administrative paperwork. $20 says she can't even hold the rifle steady, someone muttered from the group near the shed. The comment drew a few chuckles, and Elena could see heads turning as word of her request spread through the assembled trainees. More soldiers began drifting over, drawn by the entertainment value of watching the supply clerk attempt something far beyond her apparent capabilities. Before we continue with Elena's story, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you've witnessed similar situations where assumptions were made about someone's abilities in your community. Sergeant Martinez crossed his arms, his expression shifting into what Elena recognized as his teaching mode. He was preparing to deliver one of his standard lectures about military hierarchy and staying in your lane. "Ma'am, these rifles are precision instruments. We're using modified M24 sniper weapon systems today, effective range of 800 meters. The qualification course has a 73% failure rate among soldiers with documented combat experience." Elena nodded respectfully, her face showing no reaction to the statistics or the growing audience of skeptics. She had heard similar numbers before, in different contexts, under circumstances these men would never imagine. The pin on her collar seemed to grow slightly warmer against her uniform, though that might have been her imagination. "Think she even knows which end the bullet comes out of?" The voice came from somewhere behind the growing crowd, followed by more laughter. Elena's hearing, trained to detect threats at impossible distances, easily identified the speaker as Private Watson, third from the left in the cluster of observers. Martinez held up a hand to quiet the group, though his own skepticism was evident in every line of his posture. "Ma'am, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but this training is designed for designated marksmen and scout snipers. Perhaps you'd be more interested in the basic marksmanship course we offer on Thursdays. Much more appropriate for support personnel." The word appropriate hung in the air like smoke from a misfired round. Elena understood the code. Appropriate meant safe. Appropriate meant staying within the boundaries others had drawn for her. Appropriate meant accepting the limitations they assumed defined her capabilities. Elena's voice remained steady and professional when she responded. "Sergeant, I understand the difficulty of the course. I'm prepared for the challenge." The crowd had grown larger now, at least 15 soldiers forming a loose semicircle around the conversation. Elena could feel their eyes on her, could hear the whispered side bets being placed on how quickly she would embarrass herself. The morning sun climbed higher, casting sharp shadows across the range, and somewhere in the distance a drill instructor's voice carried commands that seemed to come from another world entirely. Martinez looked at his watch, then back at Elena, clearly calculating how much time this distraction would cost his training schedule. His decision was already made, written in the resigned set of his shoulders and the way he shifted his weight from foot to foot. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to say no on this one. These weapons require extensive safety certification, And frankly, we don't have the insurance clearance for non-qualified personnel. I'm sure you understand. Elena did understand. She understood that her appearance told a story these men had already written, that her role in supply logistics had created a box they could not imagine her stepping outside of. She understood that the small pin on her collar was invisible to eyes that had already decided what they were looking at. But Elena also understood something else, something that would become clear soon enough when the right person finally looked closely enough to see what everyone else had missed. The rejection should have ended it. Elena should have nodded, apologized for the interruption, and returned to her desk where supply requisitions and equipment inventories waited in neat stacks. Instead, she remained perfectly still, her dark eyes fixed on Sergeant Martinez with an intensity that made him shift uncomfortably. I understand your concerns about insurance and certification, Sergeant. Perhaps I could observe the training today, and we could discuss my qualifications afterward. The suggestion drew fresh laughter from the assembled crowd. Corporal Jenkins stepped forward, shaking his head with exaggerated sympathy. Ma'am, you really don't want to do this to yourself. Last week, we had a Marine Corps veteran washout on day one. Guy had 2 tours in Afghanistan and couldn't handle the pressure standards we maintain here. Elena tilted her head slightly, processing this information with the same careful attention she gave everything else. 2 tours in Afghanistan. She wondered if the veteran had ever worked in the kind of environments where a single missed shot meant the difference between a successful extraction and a diplomatic incident that never made the news. Private Watson decided to add his voice to the conversation, stepping out from the protective anonymity of the crowd. Ma'am, no disrespect, but this isn't like the shooting galleries at county fairs. We're talking about precision work that requires years of specialized training. Most of these guys have been practicing since they were kids, and even they struggle with the advanced techniques. The morning breeze picked up, stirring dust across the range, and causing Elena's uniform to flutter slightly. The small pin on her collar caught the light again, a brief flash that went unnoticed by everyone present. She could smell the familiar scents of gun oil and cordite residue that lingered around any serious training facility, could hear the distant crack of rounds being fired on adjacent ranges. Sergeant Martinez consulted his clipboard again, clearly searching for a diplomatic way to end this increasingly awkward situation. Ma'am, I really think your time will be better spent on duties more suited to your background. The paperwork alone for allowing non-qualified personnel on the range would take hours. But Elena was no longer listening to the rejection. Her attention had shifted to something else entirely, something that made her posture change in a way so subtle that none of the men noticed. A black SUV was approaching the training facility, its government plates visible even at a distance. The vehicle moved with the unhurried confidence of official business, and Elena recognized the significance immediately. You know what? Martinez said, his voice taking on the tone of someone offering a generous compromise. Why don't you stick around and watch for a while? Maybe you'll see what real marksmanship looks like and understand why we have these requirements. The crowd murmured approval at this solution. Elena could observe from a safe distance, satisfy her curiosity, and everyone could return to serious training without further disruption. Several soldiers were already moving toward the firing line, eager to demonstrate the kind of shooting that separated professionals from amateurs. Jenkins picked up one of the modified M24 rifles, handling it with the reverence of someone who understood its capabilities. This beauty can put rounds on target at 800 meters in the right hands. The scope alone costs more than most people make in a month. He shouldered the weapon with practiced ease, his movements smooth and confident. Elena watched him settle into a proper shooting position, noting the way he controlled his breathing and aligned his sight picture. His technique was solid, textbook perfect for standard military applications. The black SUV had pulled into the parking area now, and Elena could see 2 figures emerging from the vehicle. Even at this distance, the bearing and posture of the men marked them as senior military personnel. One of them moved with a particular authority that came from holding general stars, though his uniform details were not yet visible. Martinez began his standard briefing for the morning's training session, his voice carrying the practiced authority of someone who had delivered this speech hundreds of times. Today we're focusing on long-range precision shooting under simulated combat conditions. Wind speed is currently 5 knots from the southeast, temperature is 68 degrees, and we'll be engaging targets at distances ranging from 400 to 800 meters. Elena absorbed this information automatically, her mind already calculating the environmental factors and their effects on bullet trajectory. The calculations were second nature to her, as natural as breathing, though none of the men around her would have suspected such familiarity with ballistic mathematics. The group began moving toward the firing line, their conversation shifting to technical discussions about rifle specifications and ammunition selection. Elena followed at a respectful distance, maintaining the role of curious observer that Martinez had assigned to her. Private Watson leaned toward his companion, speaking in what he probably thought was a whisper. $10, says she gets bored and leaves within the first hour. This stuff isn't exactly exciting unless you understand what you're looking at. Elena's enhanced hearing caught every word, but she gave no sign of having overheard the comment. Instead, she focused on the approaching figures from the black SUV, noting details that escaped the attention of everyone else present. The shorter man wore the eagles of a full colonel, but it was his companion who held Elena's interest. The second figure moved with unmistakable command presence, his bearings suggesting the kind of authority that came from decades of military service at the highest levels. As he drew closer, Elena could make out the stars on his collar that confirmed her initial assessment. A general, and not just any general, but one whose presence at a routine training facility suggested this was anything but a routine visit. Elena remained perfectly still, her expression unchanged, but something in her posture shifted almost imperceptibly. The small pin on her collar seemed to pulse with significance, waiting for the right eyes to finally notice what had been hidden in plain sight all along. The first shots of the morning training session cracked across the range with sharp authority. Jenkins settled into his firing position, his breathing controlled and steady as he aligned his sight picture with the target 400 meters downrange. The modified M24 bucked against his shoulder, and through the spotting scope, Elena could see the neat hole appear just left of center mass. Not bad for warm-up, Martinez called out, consulting his observation notes. 2 inches left, but solid fundamentals. Remember, Jenkins, this weapon system is capable of subminutiofangal accuracy when properly employed. Elena watched the demonstration with the calm attention of someone completely comfortable in this environment. Her eyes tracked every detail of Jenkins' technique, noting both his strengths and the subtle inefficiencies that marked him as competent but not exceptional. The way he gripped the rifle was textbook perfect, but lacked the instinctive adaptation that came from thousands of hours under pressure. The general and colonel were walking slowly across the facility grounds now, their conversation appearing casual, but their eyes systematically evaluating everything they observed. Elena recognized the pattern of a formal inspection disguised as an informal visit. She had seen similar approaches in other contexts, other places where senior leadership needed to assess capabilities without creating artificial performance pressure. Private Watson took his position at the firing line, adjusting the bipod legs of his rifle with careful precision. His target was set at 600 meters, and Elena could see the slight tremor in his hands that suggested nervousness about performing in front of an audience that now included visiting senior officers. "This is where it gets interesting," Martinez announced to the assembled group. 600 meters separates the competent shooters from the truly skilled marksmen. Environmental factors become critical at this distance. Elena knew he was right, though not for the reasons Martinez probably understood. At 600 meters, the margin for error compressed dramatically. Wind speed, temperature variations, even the Earth's rotation began to affect bullet trajectory in ways that demanded instinctive compensation rather than calculated adjustment. Watson's first shot struck the target low and right, a miss that drew sympathetic nods from the other trainees. Martinez began his coaching feedback, his voice patient but instructive. You're not accounting for the crosswind component. This 5-knot southeast breeze is pushing your rounds right at this distance. The correction made sense for standard applications, but Elena could see additional factors that Watson and Martinez were missing entirely. The slight thermal gradient created by the morning sun warming the concrete firing pad was creating a subtle updraft that would affect bullet trajectory. The ammunition temperature difference between rounds stored in climate-controlled conditions and those exposed to morning air would create velocity variations of nearly 20 feet per second. Details that mattered when precision meant the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. She's still here, someone muttered from the group of observers. Though she's probably lost already. This technical stuff goes right over most people's heads. Elena maintained her position slightly apart from the main group, close enough to observe clearly, but distant enough to avoid interfering with the training. Her presence had become background noise to most of the soldiers, who had moved on to more important concerns like impressing their instructors and avoiding embarrassment in front of visiting officers. The general and colonel were closer now, perhaps 50 meters from the firing line. Elena could see the general's face clearly for the first time, noting the sharp intelligence in his eyes and the way he observed everything with systematic thoroughness. His companion, the colonel, carried himself with the bearing of someone accustomed to translating general officer intentions into actionable commands. Watson's second shot improved marginally, striking the target's outer ring instead of missing entirely. Martinez nodded approvingly, though Elena could see his professional assessment was less enthusiastic than his encouragement suggested. The shot grouping would be adequate for basic qualification, but insufficient for any mission requiring genuine precision. Next up, Specialist Rodriguez, Martinez called. 800 meters. This is where we separate the snipers from the riflemen. Rodriguez approached his firing position with obvious confidence, his movements suggesting extensive experience with long-range shooting. Elena watched him check his dope card, adjust his scope elevation, and settle into a position that demonstrated real skill. His breathing pattern was controlled, his grip natural, and his sight alignment precise. The 800 meter target represented the absolute limit of the M24's effective range under ideal conditions. At this distance, even expert marksmen struggled to maintain consistent accuracy. Environmental factors became critical, and the smallest equipment variations could shift point of impact by several inches. Rodriguez fired his first round, and Elena could see immediately that it was well-placed even before the spotter confirmed the hit. Center mass slightly high, the kind of shot that would neutralize a target under combat conditions and earn respect from any qualified observer. Excellent work, Rodriguez, Martinez said, genuine approval evident in his voice. That's the kind of precision we're looking for in this program. The general and colonel had stopped their approach, positioning themselves where they could observe the training without interfering. Elena noticed the general's attention focusing on the shooting demonstration, his experienced eyes evaluating both the marksmanship and the instruction methods being employed. Rodriguez prepared for his second shot, and Elena found herself unconsciously analyzing his technique with the kind of detailed assessment that came from professional necessity. His position was solid, his breathing controlled, but she could see microscopic inconsistencies that would prevent him from achieving true precision under pressure. The small pin on Elena's collar caught a brief ray of sunlight, creating a momentary flash that went unnoticed by everyone except possibly the general, whose attention seemed to sharpen slightly as he continued his systematic observation of the training facility and its personnel. Rodriguez's second shot struck just outside the scoring ring, a miss that prompted immediate analysis from Martinez and suggestions for improvement. Elena knew the correction he needed, could see exactly how environmental factors and human limitations had combined to pull the shot off target, but her role as observer precluded any contribution to the instruction process. The morning was progressing exactly as these sessions always did, with competent soldiers demonstrating adequate skills under controlled conditions. None of them suspected that they were being evaluated by someone whose understanding of precision shooting operated on an entirely different level. The general's approach changed everything without anyone realizing it at first. He and the colonel moved with deliberate casualness toward the firing line, their conversation appearing routine while their eyes cataloged every detail of the training operation. Martinez spotted them first, his posture immediately straightening into rigid attention. "General Harrison, sir," he barked, causing every soldier on the line to freeze mid-motion. Rodriguez, who had been preparing for his third shot, carefully set his rifle down and snapped to attention along with the rest of the group. "As you were, gentlemen," General Harrison said, his voice carrying the kind of authority that made relaxation an order rather than a suggestion. "Don't let us interrupt your training. We're just observing today." But the damage was already done. The informal atmosphere of the morning session had evaporated, replaced by the tension that always accompanied senior officer visits. Elena watched the transformation with professional interest, noting how the soldiers' movements became more precise but less natural under the weight of official scrutiny. Colonel Brennan, the general's companion, positioned himself where he could observe both the shooting and the instruction methods. His eyes moved systematically across the assembled personnel, conducting what Elena recognized as a thorough capability assessment disguised as casual observation. "Please continue," Sergeant Martinez, General Harrison said. "We're particularly interested in seeing how your advanced marksmanship program develops precision shooting capabilities." Martinez nodded crisply, though Elena could see the increased pressure in his movements. "Yes, sir. We were just demonstrating 8 Thun-Dreadmeter precision with Specialist Rodriguez. This distance represents the effective limit of our current weapon system under field conditions." Elena remained in her observer position, but she noticed that Colonel Brennan's attention had shifted to include the entire training group, not just the active shooters. His gaze moved methodically from person to person, conducting the kind of detailed assessment that missed nothing. Rodriguez resumed his firing position, but Elena could see that the presence of general officers had affected his concentration. His breathing was slightly elevated, his grip marginally tighter than optimal, and his sight picture took longer to acquire than his previous attempts. The shot, when it came, reflected this tension. The round struck low and left, a clear miss that would have been unacceptable under combat conditions. Rodriguez's jaw tightened with frustration, and Elena could see Martinez calculating how to provide constructive feedback without appearing to criticize a soldier's performance in front of visiting senior officers. "Wind compensation," Martinez said diplomatically. "Environmental factors become increasingly critical at extended ranges." General Harrison nodded thoughtfully, but Elena noticed his attention had begun to wander from the shooting demonstration. His eyes moved across the assembled personnel with the systematic thoroughness of someone conducting an evaluation that went beyond simple marksmanship skills. "Sergeant," the general said, his voice carrying casual authority, "how do you select candidates for this advanced training program? What qualifications do you require?" Elena felt a subtle shift in the atmosphere. The question seemed routine, but she recognized the tone of someone seeking specific information rather than making polite conversation. Colonel Brennan's attention sharpened as well, suggesting this inquiry was part of a larger assessment. "Sir, we typically select from personnel with documented combat experience and demonstrated marksmanship aptitude," Martinez replied. "Candidates must pass physical fitness standards, psychological evaluation, and preliminary shooting assessments before entering the program." The explanation was textbook correct, but Elena could see that General Harrison was looking for something beyond standard qualification criteria. His eyes continued their methodical survey of the group, pausing occasionally on individuals who caught his professional interest. "What about personnel from other specialties?" the general asked. "Support staff, logistics personnel, technical specialists? Do they ever request participation in advanced training?" The question hung in the air with unexpected weight. Elena felt several pairs of eyes shift toward her, though she maintained her position and expression without change. Martinez glanced in her direction briefly before responding to the general's inquiry. Occasionally, sir, but advanced marksmanship requires specialized background and extensive training. We maintain strict qualification standards to ensure program integrity and personnel safety. Elena noticed that Colonel Brennan's attention had focused on her during this exchange. His assessment was professional but thorough, noting details that the other soldiers had overlooked. When his gaze reached her collar, Elena saw something change in his expression, a subtle shift that suggested recognition of something significant. The colonel leaned slightly toward General Harrison and spoke in a voice pitched low enough to avoid casual overhearing. Sir, if I could have a moment to point out something of interest. Elena's pulse remained steady, but she recognized that the careful balance of the morning was about to shift dramatically. The small pin on her collar, invisible to everyone else present, had finally attracted the attention of someone qualified to understand its significance. General Harrison followed Colonel Brennan's subtle gesture, his experienced eyes focusing on Elena with the kind of systematic assessment she had seen before in other contexts. When his gaze reached her collar area, Elena saw the exact moment when recognition dawned. The general's expression did not change visibly, but Elena caught the microscopic tightening around his eyes that indicated sudden, intense interest. Colonel Brennan moved slightly closer, confirming his initial observation while maintaining the appearance of casual inspection. Rodriguez prepared for another shot, unaware that the focus of the senior officer's visit had shifted entirely. Martinez continued his instruction, explaining wind compensation techniques and environmental factors, his voice carrying across the range while a completely different evaluation took place just meters away. Elena remained perfectly still, her posture unchanged, but she knew that the careful anonymity she had maintained was about to end. The black Talon insignia that had been invisible to everyone else had finally been noticed by someone who understood exactly what it represented. General Harrison's attention was now completely focused on Elena, though his body language remained casual enough to avoid alerting the other soldiers to the significance of whatever he had observed. Colonel Brennan positioned himself to provide a better view while maintaining the appearance of routine inspection activities. The morning sun climbed higher, casting sharp shadows across the firing line, and Elena prepared herself for the moment when her carefully maintained cover would be stripped away by a single whispered word that would change everything. General Harrison's approach was so subtle that none of the training personnel noticed the shift in his attention. He moved with the practiced casualness of someone conducting routine inspections, but Elena recognized the focused intensity behind his seemingly random movements across the observation area. Colonel Brennan maintained his position slightly behind and to the left of the general, his own assessment continuing with professional thoroughness. Elena could see the exact moment when both officers confirmed what the small insignia on her collar actually represented, though their expressions remained carefully neutral. The training session continued around them, with Rodriguez attempting to recover from his previous miss. Martinez provided encouragement and technical guidance, his voice carrying across the range while the real evaluation took place in the background. The other soldiers remained focused on the marksmanship demonstration, unaware that the senior officer's attention had shifted entirely. Sergeant Martinez, General Harrison said, his voice maintaining casual authority, I'd like to observe your training procedures from a different angle. Please continue with your instruction while Colonel Brennan and I conduct our assessment. Elena knew this was the beginning of a carefully orchestrated approach. The general's words gave him freedom to move throughout the training area while maintaining the appearance of routine inspection activities. She remained in her observer position, but every instinct told her that the morning's carefully maintained balance was about to change dramatically. Colonel Brennan moved with deliberate purpose toward Elena's position, his path appearing coincidental while actually being precisely calculated. When he stopped beside her, his presence seemed natural enough to avoid drawing attention from the other soldiers. Beautiful morning for precision shooting, the colonel said, his voice pitched for casual conversation while his eyes remained fixed on the firing line. Environmental conditions are nearly perfect for this type of training. Elena nodded respectfully, recognizing the opening of what would likely be a very careful conversation. Yes, sir. Clear visibility, minimal wind, consistent lighting conditions. Her response was appropriately professional, but Elena noticed the colonel's slight reaction to her voice. Something in her tone or bearing had confirmed whatever assessment he was conducting. Colonel Brennan's experience with specialized military personnel had given him the ability to recognize capabilities that remained invisible to others. General Harrison positioned himself where he could observe both the ongoing training and Elena's conversation with Colonel Brennan. His movements remained casual, but Elena could see the systematic way he was evaluating every detail of the situation. Rodriguez fired again, this time achieving a more satisfactory result. The shot struck within the scoring ring, though not with the precision that would satisfy truly demanding standards. Martinez provided positive feedback while noting areas for improvement, his instruction remaining focused on developing fundamental skills. The colonel's attention had shifted to a more direct assessment of Elena's background and presence at the training facility. "Have you been observing these sessions long?" he asked, his question appearing to stem from casual curiosity while actually probing for specific information. Elena understood that her response would be carefully evaluated. "Today is my first time observing the advanced marksmanship training, sir. I requested permission to watch and learn about the program's methods." Colonel Brennan nodded thoughtfully, but Elena could see that he was processing information beyond her simple answer. His experienced eyes had noted details about her bearing, her positioning, and her obvious comfort in this environment that suggested background far beyond what her current role would indicate. General Harrison had moved closer, though his attention appeared focused on Martinez's instruction techniques. Elena realized that both senior officers were conducting a coordinated assessment while maintaining the appearance of routine inspection activities. The next trainee prepared for his attempt at the 800 meter target, and Elena watched his technique with the automatic analysis that came from extensive experience. She could see the minor flaws in his position that would affect accuracy, could predict where his shots would impact based on his grip pressure and sight alignment. Colonel Brennan noticed her focused attention on the shooter's technique. "You seem to follow the technical aspects quite well," he observed. "Do you have shooting experience yourself?" The question was carefully phrased to sound like polite conversation, while actually probing for specific information about her background. Elena recognized that her answer would either confirm or dispel whatever assessment the colonel was making. "Some experience, sir. I try to understand the technical requirements when observing professional training." It was a diplomatic response that acknowledged capability without making claims that might seem inappropriate for her apparent role. But Elena could see that Colonel Brennan was reading between the lines, noting the confidence in her voice and the way she tracked the ongoing demonstration. General Harrison had positioned himself where he could observe Elena directly while maintaining his cover as a casual inspector. When the next shot echoed across the range, Elena unconsciously tracked the bullet's trajectory and impact with the kind of precision that came from years of professional necessity. The general's eyes narrowed slightly as he observed her reaction. Elena realized that her instinctive assessment of the shot had been more detailed and immediate than would be expected from someone with casual shooting experience. Colonel Brennan had noticed the same thing, and both officers were now conducting a much more focused evaluation. Martinez began explaining the complexities of long-range shooting to his students, discussing factors like bullet drop, wind drift, and environmental compensation. Elena listened to his instruction with the kind of attention that suggested deep familiarity with these concepts, though she was careful to maintain her role as an interested observer. The small black Talon pin on her collar seemed to pulse with significance as both senior officers completed their initial assessment. Elena knew that the careful anonymity she had maintained was hanging by the thinnest of threads, and that a single direct question or closer examination would strip away the protective camouflage of her current assignment. General Harrison and Colonel Brennan exchanged a brief glance that confirmed their shared recognition. Elena saw the communication pass between them and knew that the next few minutes would determine whether her cover remained intact or whether the truth about her real capabilities would be revealed to everyone present. The moment of truth arrived, disguised as casual inquiry. General Harrison approached Elena's position with the unhurried confidence of someone making routine conversation, but Elena could see the focused intensity behind his seemingly casual demeanor. "Miss," the general said, his voice carrying just enough authority to capture attention without alarming the training group, "I don't believe we've been properly introduced. I'm General Harrison, and this is Colonel Brennan. We're conducting an assessment of training capabilities here today." Elena came to respectful attention, her posture perfect without being ostentatious. "Elena Vasquez, sir. I work in supply logistics for the facility." The introduction was factually accurate but incomplete, and Elena could see that both officers recognized the careful precision of her response. General Harrison nodded politely, but his eyes remained fixed on her collar area where the small black Talon insignia caught the morning light. "Supply logistics," Colonel Brennan repeated thoughtfully. "That's interesting work. I imagine you see quite a variety of equipment and personnel requirements in that role." Elena understood that the colonel was probing for information about her background and access levels. "Yes, sir. The position provides exposure to many different operational requirements and personnel specialties." Her answer was professionally appropriate, but Elena noticed both officers registering the confidence in her voice and the way she naturally used military terminology that suggested familiarity beyond administrative duties. The training session continued nearby, with another soldier preparing for his 8th Thundred-meter attempt. Martinez maintained his instruction rhythm, but Elena could see him glancing occasionally toward the conversation with the senior officers, clearly wondering about their interest in the supply clerk. General Harrison's attention focused more directly on Elena's uniform and bearing. "That's an interesting pin you're wearing," he said, his voice maintaining casual tone while his eyes fixed on the small insignia with laser precision. Elena felt the shift in atmosphere immediately. The careful balance that had protected her anonymity was about to crumble under the weight of official recognition. "Thank you, sir. It was awarded for previous service." Colonel Brennan stepped slightly closer, his assessment becoming more overt as he confirmed what both officers had already identified. "Previous service," he repeated slowly. "What branch, if you don't mind my asking?" Elena knew that any answer she gave would lead to additional questions that would eventually expose the truth about her background. The Black Talon program was classified at levels that made casual discussion impossible, but deflection would only increase their suspicion. "Army Special Operations, sir. I transferred to supply logistics after completing my active duty commitment." It was the most accurate answer she could provide without revealing classified information, but Elena could see both officers processing the implications of someone with special operations background requesting access to advanced marksmanship training. General Harrison's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, suggesting recognition of something significant that went beyond routine personnel assessment. The way he looked at her had changed from polite curiosity to focused professional evaluation. Colonel Brennan moved to where he could observe Elena's insignia from a better angle, and Elena saw the exact moment when complete recognition dawned. His expression remained carefully controlled, but she caught the subtle widening of his eyes that indicated sudden understanding. The colonel leaned toward General Harrison and spoke in a voice so low that only Elena's enhanced hearing allowed her to catch the words. "Sir, that's not a standard special operations insignia." Elena remained perfectly still, but she knew that her careful cover was disintegrating rapidly. Both officers now recognized that the small pin on her collar represented something far beyond conventional military service, something that would explain her presence at advanced marksmanship training in an entirely different context. General Harrison's attention focused completely on Elena, his assessment becoming direct and professional. The casual pretense of routine conversation had been abandoned in favor of the kind of evaluation reserved for encountering unexpected but significant personnel. The training demonstration continued around them, with Martinez explaining technical concepts and students struggling with environmental factors at extended range. None of them realized that their morning session was about to be transformed by revelations that would change everything they thought they understood about the quiet observer. Colonel Brennan positioned himself to provide both officers with a clear view of Elena's insignia while maintaining enough distance to avoid alerting the training group to the significance of their discovery. Elena could see both men confirming details that would lead inevitably to questions she could not answer without revealing classified information. Elena Vasquez, General Harrison said, his voice taking on the formal tone of official inquiry, "I think we need to have a more detailed conversation about your background and your interest in observing this training." Elena knew that the moment had arrived when her anonymity would be stripped away and her true capabilities revealed. The careful balance she had maintained between observer and participant was about to be destroyed by two words that would change everything. General Harrison looked directly at Elena, his expression combining recognition with growing understanding. Colonel Brennan moved closer, confirming what both officers had identified, and Elena prepared herself for the revelation that would transform a routine training session into something entirely different. The small black Talon insignia that had been invisible to everyone else present was about to become the focal point of a conversation that would expose capabilities none of the training personnel could have imagined. Martinez called for the next shooter to take position, his voice carrying across the range, while Elena faced the moment when her carefully guarded secret would finally be revealed to everyone present. The morning sun climbed higher, casting sharp shadows across the facility, and Elena knew that within moments everything would change. General Harrison's voice carried across the training area with unmistakable authority, cutting through the ambient noise of instruction and rifle fire. "Sergeant Martinez, could you join us for a moment, please?" The request was phrased politely, but everyone present understood it as a command. Martinez set down his clipboard and approached with the crisp efficiency of someone responding to general officer attention, though Elena could see confusion in his expression about why senior leadership wanted to discuss the supply clerk. Colonel Brennan positioned himself where he could observe both Elena and the approaching sergeant, his assessment continuing with professional thoroughness. The moment had arrived when Elena's carefully maintained anonymity would be stripped away in front of everyone who had dismissed her request to participate in training. "Sergeant," General Harrison said, his voice maintaining calm authority while his eyes remained fixed on Elena's collar insignia, "I understand this young lady requested permission to participate in your marksmanship training today." Martinez nodded respectfully, though Elena could see him wondering where this line of inquiry was leading. "Yes, sir." Ms. Vasquez asked about trying the rifle range, but given her administrative background and our safety protocols, I felt it was more appropriate for her to observe the training session. Elena remained perfectly still, knowing that the next few moments would determine whether her cover remained intact or whether the truth about her capabilities would be revealed to everyone present. The small black Talon pin on her collar seemed to pulse with significance as both officers confirmed what they had identified. General Harrison exchanged a meaningful glance with Colonel Brennan before continuing his inquiry. "Sergeant, when you assessed Ms. Vasquez's qualifications for participation, did you examine her complete service record?" The question hung in the air with unexpected weight. Elena could see Martinez processing the implications while trying to understand why general officers were taking such detailed interest in a routine training denial. His confusion was evident as he struggled to formulate an appropriate response. "Sir, I reviewed her current assignment and determined that advanced marksmanship training was outside her job requirements and safety clearance level," Martinez replied carefully. Elena watched both officers register the significance of Martinez's incomplete assessment. Colonel Brennan stepped forward slightly, his attention focusing on the conversation while maintaining his observation of Elena's insignia. "Sergeant," Colonel Brennan said, his voice carrying the tone of someone providing important information, "I think you should take a closer look at the insignia Ms. Vasquez is wearing." Elena felt the shift in atmosphere as Martinez's attention focused on her collar for the first time with genuine scrutiny. She could see the exact moment when he noticed the small pin that had been invisible to him throughout their earlier interaction. Martinez moved closer, his expression changing from confusion to growing recognition as he examined the insignia with professional attention. Elena watched him process what he was seeing, though she could tell he had not yet grasped the full significance of what the black Talon pin represented. General Harrison's voice took on the formal tone of official revelation. "Sergeant Martinez, you're looking at a black Talon insignia. Are you familiar with that designation?" Elena saw Martinez's expression shift dramatically as partial understanding dawned. The Black Talon program was legendary within certain military circles, though most personnel knew only rumors and speculation about its actual operations and selection criteria. "Sir," Martinez said slowly, his voice reflecting growing comprehension, "I've heard references to Black Talon operations, but I understood those programs were highly classified." Elena remained silent, but she could see the training group beginning to notice the intensity of the conversation between the senior officers and their sergeant. Attention was shifting away from the marksmanship demonstration toward the discussion that was about to transform everyone's understanding of the morning's events. Colonel Brennan confirmed Martinez's partial knowledge with professional precision. "Black Talon is the designation for our most elite precision shooting specialists, Sergeant. Selection requires capabilities that exceed conventional special operations standards by significant margins." Elena watched Martinez process this information while looking at her with completely transformed perspective. The administrative supply clerk who had requested rifle training was actually someone whose marksmanship credentials operated on a level he had never encountered. The implications began cascading through Martinez's understanding as he realized the significance of what had occurred. Elena could see him replaying their earlier conversation, recognizing how his assumptions had led to a massive misjudgment of her actual capabilities. General Harrison's attention focused directly on Elena as he prepared to complete the revelation that would change everything. "Ms. Vasquez, perhaps you'd like to explain to Sergeant Martinez exactly what qualifications you possess for advanced marksmanship training." Elena knew that the moment had arrived when her cover would be completely stripped away. The careful anonymity she had maintained was about to be replaced by recognition of capabilities that would shock everyone present. The training group had begun to notice the serious nature of the conversation, with several soldiers pausing their activities to observe the interaction between senior officers and their instructor. Elena could feel attention focusing on her as the morning's routine training session transformed into something entirely different. Martinez looked at Elena with expression combining embarrassment and growing understanding, realizing that his assessment of her qualifications had been catastrophically incomplete. The woman he had dismissed as unqualified for basic training was about to be revealed as someone whose capabilities exceeded anything he had imagined. Elena prepared herself to acknowledge the truth that would transform everyone's understanding of who she actually was and what she could accomplish with the rifles they had refused to let her touch. Elena's voice carried the quiet confidence of someone stating simple facts rather than making impressive claims. "Sergeant Martinez, I hold Level 7 Marksman certification from the Black Talon program. My qualification scores include consistent sub-half-minute accuracy at ranges exceeding 1,200 meters under combat conditions." The silence that followed her statement was profound. Martinez's expression shifted through several stages of comprehension as he processed what Elena had just revealed. Level 7 certification was a designation most military personnel had never heard of, representing capabilities that existed in the realm of legend rather than documented reality. Colonel Brennan provided context that made Elena's revelation even more significant. "Sergeant, there are currently 11 Level 7 marksmen in the entire United States military. The qualification requires capabilities that exceed conventional sniper standards by orders of magnitude." Elena watched Martinez struggle to reconcile her statement with everything he thought he understood about military hierarchies and personnel assignments. The administrative supply clerk standing before him possessed credentials that placed her among the most elite shooters in the world. General Harrison's attention remained focused on Elena as he continued the revelation that was transforming everyone's understanding. Ms. Vasquez has been operating under administrative cover while conducting assessment of our training facilities and methodologies. Her presence here today was not coincidental. Elena could see the training group beginning to gather around the conversation, drawn by the obvious significance of whatever was being discussed. Martinez's shocked expression and the formal attention of general officers had created an atmosphere that demanded explanation. The implications of Elena's true identity began cascading through Martinez's understanding. He realized that every assumption he had made about her qualifications had been catastrophically wrong, that his dismissive rejection of her training request had been based on complete ignorance of her actual capabilities. "Sir," Martinez said slowly, his voice reflecting growing comprehension of the situation's magnitude, "are you saying that Ms. Vasquez is here to evaluate our program rather than participate in it?" Elena's response was measured and professional, though she could see the shock spreading through the assembled group as word of the conversation reached the other soldiers. "My assignment includes assessment of current training methodologies and identification of potential improvements to existing programs." Rodriguez, who had been struggling with 8th Dreadmeter accuracy moments earlier, stepped closer with expression combining disbelief and embarrassment. "Ma'am, are you saying you could have made those shots we've been missing?" Elena's answer was simple and direct. "Yes." The single word carried weight that silenced the entire training group. Jenkins, who had laughed at her initial request, stood with mouth slightly open as he processed the revelation that the woman he had dismissed possessed shooting capabilities beyond anything he had encountered. Colonel Brennan addressed the group with formal clarity. "Gentlemen, you've been observing one of the most qualified marksmen in the United States military. Ms. Vasquez's credentials include operations that remain classified at the highest levels." Elena could see the transformation beginning in everyone's expressions as they realized the magnitude of their misjudgment. The confident dismissal and casual mockery of the morning had been replaced by shocked recognition of their own ignorance. Martinez's professional embarrassment was evident as he addressed Elena directly. "Ma'am, I apologize for my earlier assessment. Had I known your qualifications, the conversation would have proceeded very differently." Elena nodded graciously, understanding that Martinez had acted based on the information available to him. "Sergeant, your protocols were appropriate based on apparent circumstances. No apology is necessary." But Elena could see that the assembled soldiers were struggling to process the revelation. Watson, who had bet against her abilities, looked like someone who had just learned he had been mocking a professional athlete while they watched him play recreational sports. General Harrison addressed the group with official authority. "Gentlemen, you're now aware that this training session is being evaluated by someone whose expertise exceeds anything you've previously encountered. I suggest you pay close attention to any observations she might offer." Elena remained professionally modest despite the dramatic shift in how everyone perceived her. The small black Talon insignia on her collar, invisible to everyone until moments earlier, now seemed to pulse with significance that commanded respect from every person present. The morning sun climbed higher, casting sharp shadows across the range while Elena prepared to demonstrate the capabilities that her credentials had only described in theoretical terms. The rifles that had been deemed too advanced for her to handle were about to be employed by someone whose skills operated on levels none of them had imagined. Martinez looked at the modified M24 rifle systems with completely transformed perspective, realizing that the weapons he considered precision instruments were about to be used by someone for whom they represented basic equipment rather than advanced technology. Elena could see the anticipation building among the training group as they recognized that they were about to witness demonstration of marksmanship capabilities that existed beyond their previous experience. The woman they had dismissed was about to show them what true precision shooting actually looked like. The revelation was complete, but Elena knew that words alone would never fully convey the reality of what Black Talon certification actually meant. The assembled soldiers would need to see her capabilities demonstrated before they could truly understand the magnitude of their earlier misjudgment. The transformation in everyone's demeanor was immediate and profound. Elena could see the assembled soldiers struggling to reconcile their earlier dismissive attitude with the shocking revelation of her true credentials. The confident mockery had been replaced by uncomfortable awareness of their massive misjudgment. General Harrison addressed the group with formal authority that demanded attention. "Gentlemen, I think it would be educational for everyone present to observe how Level 7 marksmanship capabilities actually function in practice." Elena understood that the moment had arrived for demonstration rather than explanation. Words could describe her qualifications, but only actual performance would convey the reality of what Black Talon certification represented in practical terms. Martinez approached with expression combining professional embarrassment and genuine curiosity. "Ma'am, would you be willing to demonstrate your capabilities using our equipment? I think the educational value would be significant for the entire training group." Elena nodded politely, though she could see the nervousness in Martinez's bearing as he realized that his training program was about to be evaluated by someone whose expertise operated on levels he had never encountered. "Yes, Sergeant, that would be appropriate." The assembled soldiers formed a loose semicircle around the firing line, their earlier casual confidence replaced by the tension that came from witnessing something completely outside their previous experience. Elena could see doubt and anticipation warring in their expressions as they prepared to observe capabilities they had only heard described in theoretical terms. Rodriguez stepped forward with obvious nervousness, gesturing toward the rifle he had been struggling with moments earlier. "Ma'am, this is the weapon system we've been using today. Modified M24, effective range 800 meters under optimal conditions." Elena examined the rifle with professional thoroughness, her hands moving over the weapon with the kind of familiarity that came from extensive experience with precision instruments. She could see everyone watching her assessment, noting the confidence in her movements and the systematic way she evaluated every component. "The scope is properly zeroed for standard ammunition at this elevation and temperature," Martinez offered, his voice reflecting uncertainty about whether his equipment would meet her standards. Elena's evaluation was swift and comprehensive. She checked the rifle's balance, tested the trigger pull, and examined the scope mounting with the kind of detailed assessment that impressed even the experienced soldiers watching her preparation. Colonel Brennan positioned himself where he could observe both Elena's technique and the reactions of the training group. His experience with exceptional marksmen allowed him to recognize the subtle differences in her preparation that marked her as operating on an entirely different level. Elena settled into a shooting position that demonstrated textbook perfection while incorporating refinements that none of the observers had seen before. Her breathing pattern was controlled, her grip natural, and her sight alignment precise beyond anything the training group had witnessed. The target at 800 meters, which had challenged every soldier present, represented basic qualification distance for Elena's capabilities. She could see the doubt in everyone's expressions as they wondered whether her credentials would translate into actual performance under observation. General Harrison's attention focused completely on Elena's demonstration, recognizing that the educational value for the assembled soldiers would extend far beyond simple marksmanship instruction. They were about to witness the practical application of training that most military personnel never encountered. Elena's first shot preparation was methodical and unhurried, her movements demonstrating the kind of precision that came from years of operating under conditions where single shots determine mission success or failure. The assembled observers watched in complete silence as she aligned her sight picture. Martinez held his breath, realizing that his earlier dismissal of Elena's qualifications was about to be proven catastrophically wrong in front of general officers and his entire training group. The woman he had refused permission to touch a rifle was about to demonstrate capabilities that would embarrass everyone present. Elena could feel the weight of everyone's attention as she prepared to fire. The morning air was still, environmental conditions were optimal, and a modified M24 rifle represented equipment she could operate with unconscious competence. The silence stretched across the range as Elena completed her sight alignment and began her final breathing sequence. Every person present understood that they were about to witness demonstration of marksmanship capabilities that operated beyond their previous experience. Colonel Brennan checked his watch, noting details that would be included in his assessment report about training facility capabilities and personnel qualifications. Elena's demonstration would provide data points that extended far beyond simple shooting accuracy. Elena's finger found the trigger with mechanical precision, her pressure application smooth and consistent as she prepared to deliver the shot that would prove her credentials beyond any possibility of doubt. The assembled soldiers watched with mixture of anticipation and nervousness as the moment of truth approached. The 8-ton target that had challenged experienced marksmen all morning was about to be engaged by someone for whom such distances represented routine rather than exceptional performance. Elena could see the doubt in everyone's faces as they wondered whether her claimed capabilities would match her actual demonstration. The rifle settled into perfect alignment as Elena completed her preparation, and the assembled observers held their breath while waiting to see whether the woman they had dismissed would actually possess the extraordinary capabilities her credentials suggested. The shot echoed across the range with crisp authority, and for 3 seconds absolute silence hung in the morning air. Elena remained in position, her breathing controlled and steady, while everyone present waited for the spotter's call that would either confirm or shatter their transformed expectations. Through the spotting scope, Rodriguez's voice cracked slightly as he made the announcement. Hit! Dead center. Perfect bullseye. The silence stretched for another heartbeat before the implications began registering. Elena had achieved, with casual precision, what the entire training group had been struggling to accomplish all morning. The 8-ton target that represented the absolute limit of their capabilities had been effortlessly mastered on her first attempt. Martinez lowered his binoculars with expression combining amazement and professional embarrassment. His earlier assessment of Elena's qualifications had been proven spectacularly wrong in front of general officers and his entire training group. Ma'am, that was exceptional shooting. Elena's response was characteristically modest. Thank you, Sergeant. Standard qualification for my certification level. The phrase standard qualification hung in the air with devastating impact. What had impressed everyone present represented basic competency rather than exceptional performance for someone with Elena's credentials. The assembled soldiers exchanged glances that reflected growing comprehension of how badly they had misjudged her capabilities. General Harrison stepped forward with expression reflecting satisfaction at the demonstration's educational value. Gentlemen, you've just observed Level 7 marksmanship capabilities in action. Notice that Ms. Vasquez achieved perfect accuracy on her first attempt at a distance that challenged your most experienced shooters. Elena could see the training group processing the implications of what they had witnessed. Jenkins, who had laughed at her initial request, stood with mouth slightly open as he realized the magnitude of his earlier misjudgment. The woman he had dismissed had just demonstrated shooting skills that operated beyond his comprehension. Colonel Brennan addressed the assembled soldiers with formal clarity. This demonstration illustrates why comprehensive personnel assessment is critical before making capability judgments. Assumptions based on appearance or current assignment can lead to significant errors in evaluation. Elena remained in position, though she could feel the weight of everyone's transformed attention. The casual dismissal and confident mockery of the morning had been replaced by respectful recognition of demonstrated expertise that exceeded anything they had previously encountered. Watson, who had placed bets against her success, looked like someone who had just realized he had been mocking a professional athlete. His earlier confidence had evaporated under the reality of Elena's effortless precision at distances that challenged his own abilities. Martinez approached with obvious nervousness about his next request. "Ma'am, would you be willing to demonstrate capabilities at extended range? We have targets positioned at 1,200 meters for advanced evaluation purposes." Elena's response was immediate and confident. "Of course, Sergeant." The casual acceptance of the 1,200-meter challenge sent another wave of shock through the assembled group. That distance exceeded the effective range of their weapon systems and represented shooting that most of them had only heard described in theoretical terms. Elena adjusted the rifle's scope with professional efficiency, her movements demonstrating familiarity with precision equipment that impressed even the experienced observers. Her calculations for environmental factors were swift and automatic, incorporating variables that the training group had never considered. Rodriguez positioned himself at the spotting scope for the extended range target, his own excitement evident as he prepared to observe marksmanship capabilities that operated beyond conventional standards. The 1,200-meter target was barely visible through standard optics, representing a challenge that few marksmen ever attempted. Elena's preparation for the extended range shot was methodical and unhurried, her technique incorporating refinements that none of the observers had seen before. The assembled soldiers watched in fascination as she demonstrated capabilities that existed in the realm of legend rather than documented reality. General Harrison's attention remained focused on both Elena's demonstration and the educational impact on the training group. The morning session had transformed from routine instruction into observation of capabilities that would influence their understanding of precision shooting for years to come. Elena could see the anticipation building among the observers as they realized they were about to witness something completely outside their previous experience. The woman they had dismissed was preparing to demonstrate marksmanship at ranges that challenged the limits of both equipment and human capability. Colonel Brennan checked his assessment notes, recognizing that Elena's demonstration would provide data points that extended far beyond simple accuracy measurements. The educational value for the assembled personnel represented training opportunities that most soldiers never encountered. Elena settled into her final position for the 1,200-meter shot, her breathing pattern controlled and her sight alignment precise beyond anything the training group had witnessed. The assembled observers held their breath while waiting to see whether her capabilities could overcome both distance and equipment limitations. The morning sun climbed higher, casting sharp shadows across the range, while Elena prepared to deliver the shot that would complete her demonstration of capabilities that operated beyond conventional understanding of precision marksmanship. The 1,200-meter shot required calculations that pushed both equipment and human capability to their absolute limits. Elena's preparation was methodical and precise, incorporating environmental factors that the assembled observers had never considered relevant to marksmanship at such extreme distances. Wind speed, temperature gradients, barometric pressure, even the Earth's rotation became critical variables at this range. Elena's mental calculations were swift and automatic, processing data with a kind of precision that came from years of operating under conditions where mathematical accuracy meant the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Rodriguez adjusted the spotting scope for maximum magnification, though even with optimal optics the target appeared as little more than a distant speck. His voice reflected nervous excitement as he confirmed his visual acquisition. Target acquired at 1,200 meters. Barely visible even with full magnification. Elena's sight picture required adjustments that demonstrated her familiarity with extreme range shooting. The scope's elevation turrets were pushed to near maximum adjustment, and her holdover calculations incorporated factors that most marksmen never encountered in practical applications. Martinez watched Elena's preparation with growing comprehension of the expertise he was observing. Every movement demonstrated capabilities that operated beyond conventional training standards, incorporating techniques that few shooters ever mastered. The assembled soldiers stood in complete silence, recognizing that they were about to witness something extraordinary. Elena's casual confidence at this impossible distance had transformed their skepticism into nervous anticipation about capabilities that existed beyond their understanding. Elena's breathing pattern became precisely controlled as she prepared for the shot that would either confirm or limit her demonstrated abilities. The 1,200-meter target represented the absolute edge of what their equipment could accomplish, even in the hands of someone with exceptional skills. General Harrison's attention focused completely on Elena's technique, noting details that would be included in his assessment of both her capabilities and the educational value for the training personnel. The demonstration was providing insights into precision shooting that extended far beyond routine instruction. Elena's final sight alignment required compensation for factors that challenged the limits of both human perception and mechanical precision. The target was barely visible, environmental effects were maximized, and equipment limitations demanded perfect execution to achieve success. Colonel Brennan positioned himself where he could observe both Elena's shooting and the reactions of the training group. Their expressions reflected mixture of anticipation and disbelief as they prepared to witness capabilities that most of them had only heard described in theoretical terms. Elena's trigger finger found perfect position as she completed her preparation sequence. The shot would either demonstrate capabilities that exceeded conventional understanding or reveal the practical limits of even exceptional marksmanship under challenging conditions. The assembled observers held their breath as Elena began her final breathing cycle. The morning air was still, environmental conditions were optimal, but the distance pushed every variable to extreme parameters that demanded flawless execution. Martinez found himself calculating the improbability of success at such range with standard equipment, realizing that Elena was attempting something that challenged the boundaries of what he considered possible with conventional rifle systems. Elena's sight picture stabilized as she applied precise trigger pressure, her technique incorporating refinements that demonstrated years of training under conditions that demanded perfection rather than mere competency. The assembled soldiers watched with fascination as she prepared to deliver the shot. Rodriguez maintained his position at the spotting scope, though he privately wondered whether the target would be visible enough to confirm impact at such extreme distance. The 1,200-meter shot represented observation challenges that matched the marksmanship difficulties. Elena could feel the weight of everyone's attention as she completed her final preparations. The demonstration had already exceeded their expectations, but this shot would either confirm her exceptional capabilities or establish the practical boundaries of even extraordinary marksmanship. The silence across the range was profound as Elena reached the moment of trigger release. Every person present understood that they were about to witness either exceptional success or the inevitable limitations that governed even the most skilled marksman. Elena's breathing stopped at natural respiratory pause as she applied final trigger pressure. The shot preparation was complete, environmental calculations were finished, and mechanical alignment was perfect within the constraints of available equipment. The assembled training group watched with mixture of anticipation and nervous excitement, recognizing that Elena's next shot would either demonstrate capabilities that operated beyond their comprehension or reveal that even exceptional marksmen faced practical limitations at extreme distances. General Harrison's assessment would include detailed analysis of both Elena's demonstrated capabilities and their implications for advanced training methodologies. The morning session had evolved into observation of marksmanship that challenged conventional understanding of human limitations. Elena prepared to deliver the shot that would complete her demonstration of capabilities that had transformed routine training into witness of extraordinary precision shooting at distances that few marksmen ever attempted. The shot cracked across the range with devastating finality. Elena remained motionless in her firing position, while everyone present strained to see the impossible distance where her bullet had traveled. The silence stretched for 5 eternal seconds before Rodriguez's voice shattered the tension. Hit! Dead center. Perfect bullseye at 1,200 meters. The announcement hit the assembled group like a physical blow. Martinez's binoculars trembled in his hands as he confirmed what seemed impossible. Jenkins stood with mouth agape, his earlier mockery now seeming like the foolish judgment of someone who had challenged a master while possessing no understanding of true expertise. Elena rose from her firing position with the same calm professionalism she had maintained throughout the demonstration. The impossible shot had been delivered with the casual precision that marked someone for whom extraordinary performance represented routine competency rather than exceptional achievement. General Harrison stepped forward, his expression reflecting complete satisfaction with the morning's educational demonstration. Gentlemen, you have just witnessed Level 7 marksmanship capabilities applied under practical conditions. Ms. Vasquez has achieved perfect accuracy at distances that challenge the absolute limits of your equipment. The transformation in everyone's demeanor was complete and irreversible. Watson, who had bet against Elena's abilities, looked like someone who had just realized he had been mocking a world champion. Rodriguez shook his head in amazement, understanding that he had witnessed shooting capabilities that operated beyond anything in his experience. Colonel Brennan addressed the assembled soldiers with formal authority. This demonstration illustrates the importance of comprehensive assessment before making capability judgments. Professional expertise can exist in unexpected forms and should be recognized rather than dismissed. Elena accepted the praise with characteristic modesty, though she could see the profound impact her demonstration had created. The casual dismissal and confident mockery of the morning had been replaced by respectful recognition of capabilities that exceeded everyone's previous understanding. Martinez approached with obvious embarrassment about his earlier misjudgment. "Ma'am, I owe you a sincere apology for my assessment this morning. Had I understood your qualifications, this entire situation would have proceeded very differently." Elena's response reflected professional grace under circumstances that would have justified less charitable reactions. "Sergeant Martinez, your protocols were appropriate based on available information. Today's demonstration provides educational value that benefits everyone present." The assembled soldiers began to process the full implications of what they had witnessed. Elena had not merely proven her credentials. She had demonstrated capabilities that redefined their understanding of what human marksmanship could accomplish under optimal conditions. Jenkins stepped forward with expression combining amazement and genuine respect. "Ma'am, that 1,200-meter shot was beyond anything I thought possible with standard equipment. How do you achieve that level of precision?" Elena's explanation was technically comprehensive, but presented in terms the training group could understand. Consistent technique, environmental awareness, and extensive practice under varied conditions. The capabilities develop over time through systematic training and practical application. General Harrison seized the educational opportunity to provide broader context for the assembled personnel. Ms. Vasquez represents the culmination of specialized training programs that most military personnel never encounter. Her demonstration illustrates capabilities that protect national interests through precision rather than force. The morning sun had climbed high, casting bright light across the range where Elena had transformed routine training into witness of extraordinary human capability. The rifles that had seemed advanced now appeared basic compared to the skills that had employed them so effortlessly. Colonel Brennan completed his assessment notes, recognizing that Elena's demonstration would influence training methodologies and personnel evaluation procedures throughout the facility. The educational impact extended far beyond simple marksmanship instruction. Elena prepared to conclude her visit, knowing that her mission assessment was complete and her cover was no longer necessary. The supply logistics assignment had provided perfect camouflage for evaluation purposes, though that anonymity had been permanently sacrificed for educational demonstration. Before we finish, Elena said, addressing the assembled group with professional warmth, I hope today's demonstration encourages continued dedication to precision shooting training. Excellence requires persistent effort and systematic improvement over time. If this story of hidden expertise and earned respect moved you, drop a comment about your favorite moment, or share if you've ever witnessed someone surprise everyone with capabilities that exceeded all expectations. Martinez stood at attention as Elena prepared to depart, his expression reflecting transformed understanding of the personnel evaluation mistakes he had made. The woman he had dismissed had proven to be among the most qualified marksmen in the entire military. Elena walked toward the waiting vehicle where her real assignment would continue, leaving behind a training group whose understanding of human capability had been permanently expanded. The black Talon insignia on her collar, invisible to everyone until recognition by trained eyes, now commanded the respect it had always deserved. General Harrison watched Elena's departure with satisfaction that the morning's educational objectives had been exceeded dramatically. The assembled soldiers would remember this demonstration for the remainder of their careers, influencing their approach to both marksmanship and personnel assessment. The range returned to routine training activities, but the memory of Elena's impossible shots would remain as permanent reminder that exceptional capability could appear in unexpected forms and should always be recognized rather than dismissed through uninformed judgment.